Hey, welcome back to the Tasty Crypto Show. I'm Dan Cecilia. Today, I'm joined by Kyle Samani. Kyle's the co-founder of Multicoin Capital, one of the largest crypto-focused investment funds, and he is also chairman of Forward Industries, a crypto treasury company established to become the largest public holder of Solana with over 6.8 million sold tokens held to date. Kyle helped lead the seed round of Solana back in 2018 and has been actively investing in crypto through Multicoin since 2017. Hey, Kyle, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dan, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Really excited to talk about this. Solana has been in the news. These DATs have been in the news. Forward Industries, I think you guys, have recently raised that $1.6 billion PIPE investment. But I want to start at the beginning. I want to learn more about, your start in the space. And I know early on in your career, you were working in software sales, co-founded a software firm in Texas. How'd you decide to pivot into crypto, and what led you to the Solana seed round in 2018?
Yeah, appreciate the chance to be here. I kind of found my way into crypto over the course of 2016. I discovered Ethereum in March of 2016, and I looked into the API and how to program it. And at the time, the term DeFi didn't exist. The term permissionless finance didn't exist. But after looking at the API, I kind of understood those core seeds of those ideas, even though we didn't really have the vocabulary at the time to describe them. And that struck me as very important. And kind of from there, fell down the proverbial crypto rabbit hole. By early 2017, I had developed a full-time internet hobby and kind of made the decision to launch Multicoin in May of 2017. We launched on October 1st of 2017. So that was the first part of the question. And what was the second part of the question?
Yeah, I want to know how you came across Solana. Like, how'd you meet Toli and some of the early co-founders and ultimately lead that seed round?
Yeah, I had a chance to meet Anatoly and Raj for the seed round. At the time, I was very actively looking at alternative L1s. I was very disenchanted with Ethereum. Ethereum was my first true love in crypto, and I've obviously done a full 180. At this point, and really don't like it. My kind of moment when I flipped was DevCon 3 in November of 2017. It's about 6 weeks after Multicoin launched, and I've been following Ethereum at that point for, call it, 18 or 20 months, and I started to go very frustrated. I was like, hey, you guys have been talking about scaling this thing. There's a lot of research papers and ideas, hypercube routing and sharding and state channels and plasma chains and all these different things. And I was like, cool, what's the game plan? And obviously it's hard to appreciate this, but just how much Ethereum was the star of the show in 2017. Ethereum went from $10 to $1,000 in 1 year. And if Ethereum was the fastest asset in human history to 100 billion in market cap. And so it was, what's it called? It was the fastest asset in human history to $100 billion. The chain was not performing particularly well. Every time there was an ICO, the chain would get congested, transactions would drop, fees would spike. When CryptoKitties launched, same thing happened. And I was like, all right, well, it's your annual developer conference. You're literally the star of all of finance. Obviously, this is when you've been doing all this research in public for 3 years. Tell us the game plan. And DevCon comes and goes. Vitalik gives a keynote. He shares some research ideas, but does not lay out a game plan. And I was just so flabbergasted, because I was like, how could you possibly be? Not only could Vitalik be in the position he was in, but then all of the people around him who were advising him, and to go into your annual developer conference and not have a game plan. And I was totally baffled. And that's the moment I gave up on Ethereum. And I set out to go find alternatives. And ultimately, that search led me to Solana. And Anatoly really stood out to me for a handful of reasons as a founder. The most important was he was focused on a use case. At the time, he was calling it blockchain at NASDAQ speed. That kind of core idea has now evolved into what we call internet capital markets. But he understood intuitively, even in 2017, 2018, that these blockchain systems were going to be first and foremost trading systems. And he made all of his design decisions focused around that. And all of the other L1 founders were just like, oh, I'm here to build a better blockchain without a use case focus. And so a lot of things stood out, but that was probably the biggest.
Yeah, so I think that's a great story. And I think, I was early in the space. 2017 is kind of when I got in. I was out here in Chicago working in brokerage industries, saw that spike in Bitcoin to 20K. CME launched the futures and the bubble kind of deflated. And, that led me to look for alternative use cases as well. So I kind of echo that sentiment where, there needed to be an alternative. There needed to be something that was usable for useful for users that could build performant apps on it, low fees, and scalable, right? So, I definitely echo that story, being in the space at that time. So fast forward, walk us through the forward industry story. You recently closed that $1.6 billion PIPE financing led by Galaxy, Jump, Multicoin, heavy hitters in the space. You have 6.8 million sold tokens on the balance sheet. What's the flywheel for forward? How are we generating cash flow here?
Yeah. So in terms of how forward came to be, people have been asking me to do this for about a year, and I kept on saying no. And then what caused me to change my mind was a speech that SEC Chair Paul Atkins gave on July 31st. In that speech, he announced Project Crypto, and he said unequivocally, we're going to move U.S. securities markets on chain. And when he said that, I was like, you know what? I actually think doing a DAT is interesting because now it allows me to basically operate in the domain of U.S. equities and then to try and advance the interests of Project Crypto even faster than they would otherwise move. So that was kind of my impetus for getting this thing off the ground. In terms of like what we're looking to do on a go-forwards basis, we want to be doing things natively on the Solana blockchain. We've already started that by staking. Today we're staking the vast majority of our Solana tokens. And we've talked about this already. We very much intend to deploy our balance sheet into DeFi. You can think about the balance sheet in two segments, dollars and SOL. On the dollar side, we can borrow today at roughly 7.5 to 8% from various crypto lenders. And we can deploy that on-chain on Solana in the 12 to 20% range. So there's a nice kind of cost of capital arbitrage there. It's not risk-free by any means, but we feel that given the intrinsic risk profile and mandate of this entity, that is exactly the kind of risk that our shareholders should want us to take as management and as board. So we'll be doing that soon. And then the other side of the balance sheet is Solana, of course. We are seeing all the SOL, and there's a ton of vaults you can deploy into so you can earn incremental yield on top of the staking yield. So you should expect to see that stuff start to ramp up in the fairly near future. I'm excited to talk about it when it becomes available. Beyond that, we have aspirations to get even more advanced on chain. I can't quite share those details yet, but I do think I'm optimistic that Forward is going to be a pretty active participant on chain, both directly and through vault products.
Gotcha. Yeah. And, I know I was reading a bit into the company and some of the press releases, and I know you've acquired some validators, so you're participating in the ecosystem. You're obviously staking in DeFi to sort of generate that yield. So it is, in other words, this SOL is being productive, right? The SOL is being productive for investors. You're contributing to the growth of the Solana ecosystem. In some ways, you're working with the foundation to do some more staking DeFi support. Essentially support Solana. So you recently released a press release around your deal with Superstate. So this idea of tokenized equity, this idea of tokenization, right? We've heard it in traditional finance. Our viewers, our retail traders, Robinhood's been talking about it. Obviously, the big banks have been talking about it. So you announced this partnership with Robert Leshner's Superstate. Can you give us an overview of this deal? Like, what do you believe the deal unlocks for your holders?
Yeah. So look, our as part of Project Crypto, we look at our job is to accelerate this transition to moving U.S. securities markets on chain. We realized very quickly we can obviously issue forward industries equity on Solana. I've known Robert and the team at Superstate for a number of years. I consider Robert a friend. He's obviously a well-known and successful crypto entrepreneur. So called Robert and was able to get to a deal very quickly with Superstate. As part of that deal, Forward Industries actually secured a right to get a substantial equity stake in Superstate for no cash consideration, but for being kind of like a flagship customer. And what I mean by that is, step one is tokenizing our equity and putting it on chain. Fine, whatever, that's easy. But beyond that, we want to be able to prove that you can run all capital markets operations on chain. That includes shareholder governance. That includes future fundraisers. That includes dividends. That includes mergers and acquisitions. That includes stock splits, all of these other kinds of things. And if we're going to move U.S. securities markets on chain, then someone needs to be first and just like do all of that stuff.
Right.
And we clearly view it's in our mandate to be the guinea pig and to do all of those things first. So part of our deal with Superstate was not only are we going to tokenize our equity, we're going to raise our hand and do all of these things first so that they can prove it out. And then obviously for then all of Superstate's follow-on customers, there's a known and proven path.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And as part of that, like you said, the tokenizing the equity, that's easy, right? That's kind of table stakes, but you also plan to allow forward stock or forward shares to be used as collateral in DeFi protocols like Jupiter, Drift, Camino. Do you see an appetite for that? Is this just something you're kind of testing? Like you said, you're trying to be the first, trying to prove this use case. Like, how does that work briefly?
Yeah. So as part of our announcement with Superstate, we also announced our intents to work with specifically the three large borrow lends, Drift, Camino, and Jupiter, to make sure that they can support forward equity as collateral in their respective systems. So I'm optimistic that will go live when in a couple of weeks when all this happens. The intent here is obviously like assets are objectively more useful if they can be used as collateral than if they can't be. And obviously those are the three major borrow lends on Solana today. So it was just kind of natural to call those guys and make sure they have the technical integration ready to go. Obviously, the other benefit here now is for companies 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 who follow in our footsteps. They'll know that again, all of the technical integrations are ready to go, right? So someone has to be first. Someone has to call all these guys. We're very fortunate that we have pre-existing relationships with all of these teams, so we can pick up the phone, call them. And they'll get the engineering work done that they need to.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think you made a really interesting note, especially for our users, our investors, traders at the firm here at Tasty Trade. It's useful, borrow lend, using collateral to go out and do other things in the space, right? So most retail traders here, they're familiar with MicroStrategy, they're familiar with iBit, right? Trading options on iBit. Bitmine, Tom Lee launched a DAT recently, so. I kind of want to know, how does Forward set itself apart from these other retail accessible vehicles, that retail traders are familiar with? Yeah,
I mean, we look just like issuing security. Common shares and buying SOL is like good and interesting. Well, obviously, we have an ATM. Bitmine has an ATM. MSTR has an ATM. We have that, but that's not what's interesting here. What's interesting here is our ability to be capital allocators and to produce cash flow and yield for our shareholders. Step one is staking. That was the easiest step. We're already live with that. We're staking the vast majority of our SOL today. Step two is participating in DeFi, and we're now getting all of the infrastructure in place so that we can do that at scale. I'm optimistic that Forward is going to be one of the largest, if not the single largest entity on chain in the not too distant future. And so we want to be a part of the Solana ecosystem, and we want to produce as much cash flow for our shareholders as possible. And I believe we are in a position to do so by leveraging our scale, by leveraging our brand and our relationships. Moreover, in addition to just like deploying capital on chain, we've actually we're working on negotiating deals with these various DeFi teams so that we can actually earn tokens from them for participating in their respective systems as one of the largest on-chain players. And so by doing all of this work, again, by leveraging our scale, our relationships, and our network, we want to be able to do all of that and then drive even more value back to our shareholders at Forward.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting because you look at MicroStrategy and what Saylor's been doing, who's pioneered this. He was the first, right, to kind of move into this space, and he has these ATM vehicles, he has these preferred share vehicles. But like you mentioned before, and in other interviews I've watched, Bitcoin doesn't generate that much yield, right? There's not really a lot you can do with it. It
generates zero yield.
Zero yield, right? So to be a productive asset, I think your bet is Solana, right? And you're not only just buying it, like you said, and holding on the balance sheet, but you're moving into DeFi, you're allowing this yield to be generated, you're running infrastructure, you're doing things that turns this into a real viable business, and also with your scale, with your partners, allowing other projects to kind of piggyback off this. So this DAT craze has really blown up over the last couple of months. Obviously we know BitMine, Tom Lee, he's on every single, major media network, doing it for Ethereum. There's a bunch of others. I did an Athena one the other week. There's 40, 50 of these trading right now. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. Is it a crowded space? Is it in some ways maybe not a bubble, but could use that term? Do you see an opportunity for consolidation, and how are you positioned for that?
Yeah, look, there's always bear markets in crypto, and then I think in DATs that we'll have a bear market. And look, in a lot of ways, the bear market is already here for DATs. A lot of the DATs are trading well below 1x MNAV. I was actually looking this morning. One of the Bitcoin ones is trading at 0.3x. There were a bunch trading in the 0.5 to 0.6x range. So that's already started to happen. There's going to be a shakeout in this industry, in this space. It's inevitable. The world does not need 13 Bitcoin DATs. The world really only needs one Bitcoin DAT, and it's obvious which one that is. Strategy is in a league of its own. The world, I think, only needs one Ethereum DAT. As of now, it does not appear that SBET versus BMNR is in any way differentiated. Again, that may change, but so far they haven't done anything to differentiate. And then you look at the Solana DATs. Right now there's 7 or so, roughly.
Yeah.
I don't think the market's going to sustain 7 of these things, and we're doing everything we can to differentiate. We started step 1 with Superstate. We have a bunch of other stuff in the works, and I'm excited to share it when it's ready.
Great. Yeah. No, I think it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. I think a couple of the other Solana ones like UpXE, and I can't even remember, but there's not a lot of information on them. So I think Ford's well positioned in that regard. So I want to get into something a little bit more specific to Solana, a little bit more specific to you. It's this idea of internet capital markets, right? If you've been in the space, if you're a crypto native, you're familiar with last cycle, kind of the ETH maxis kind of yelling about, ultrasound money, right? There's always these narratives and stuff that pop out. And one thing that I think is admirable about you and Multicoin and what you've done is you had conviction, right? And you rode the Solana, you saw it early, you got in, you held your conviction. We went through that 2022, 2023 bear market, and we came back out, and now we have awesome applications, Pump.Fund, we have Jupiter, we have Camino, we have Meteora just launched. But I want to specifically focus on this narrative and your thesis around internet capital markets. Can you explain this? Can you just give a brief overview of what that means?
Yeah. At the highest level, the idea of internet capital markets is quite simple, which is any person anywhere in the world should be able to trade any asset from just their phone and having an internet connection. And that's it. And if you think about it, it's like a shockingly simple concept.
Right.
It's very libertarian, kind of naturally. And it's just what you would kind of assume, why isn't that the way the world works? There's no obvious reason why the world should not work. But as a practical matter, the world does not work that way. And in fact, it's still probably many years away from working that way. So that's the basic idea. As I think about the internet capital markets thesis, I think about it kind of through 2 distinct lenses. One is the simpler lens, which is just let's take Apple and Google and NVIDIA and all these things and trade them on chain so that they're 24/7, so that you have DeFi, you have programmability, you have all these other things. You have access, making it easier for guys in the Philippines or Argentina to own these assets. That's kind of the obvious side. And I think when you see Larry Fink going on TV talking about tokenization, I think that's primarily what's running through his head. The other side of internet capital markets is the stuff I spend more of my time thinking about, which is this idea of embedding trading as a new modality in new contexts. And what I mean by that is, for the last 35 years of the internet, finance has lived in its own little bubble on the internet, and then there's been everything else. You can go read on the Wall Street Journal, you can go learn about something on Twitter or on Telegram or whatever, and then if you want to go and trade, you go to E-Trade or Interactive Brokers or Morgan Stanley or Coinbase or Robinhood or your Phantom wallet. And all of those things that I just named, the user interface is exactly the same, meaning the homepage is your portfolio. There's a search box at the top. You type in a ticker or a contract address. You go to the asset page. The asset page is a price chart and a buy and a sell button. And that organizational system literally has not changed in 35 years. And it's not, obviously it's not a bad system. It's intuitive, and there's a reason why it is what it is. But my point is that it just lives in this little isolated bubble. And the other vision of the other side of internet capital markets is embracing this idea of finance as a internet native first class primitive. And what that really means practically is bringing finance to new places around the internet. The first real version of this was actually the Telegram bots, which launched in the summer of 2023. And for the first time ever, when you were trading out of a Telegram bot, the trading UI did not look like Phantom or Coinbase or Robinhood, right? It looked like Telegram. And that was the first time ever there was finance in this kind of new context. And we have the single player Telegram bots. There's now multiplayer Telegram bots, meaning you can add a bot to a group chat with your friends. And then naturally, the obvious actions are if you make a trade, it'll broadcast that to the group. And then obviously your friends can either copy trade you or counter trade you, right? And there's a lot of kind of fun social cohesion that comes from that. I expect, in the not too distant future, if you're reading the Wall Street Journal reading an article about interest rates, obviously at the top of the article, it should not be a screenshot of the Kalshi market. It should be an interactive widget with a buy and a sell button. Right. And if you're reading about Apple's earnings, let's say earnings are coming up, there should be a prediction of, is Apple going to ship more than 1 million iPhones or whatever? Is Apple going to beat earnings estimate EPS? This is like very obvious that you should be able to embed prediction markets on media, all sports media. I mean, if you have a football game coming up and you're reading about something, clearly there should be a prediction market on the game, or if the guy's going to score this many points or whatever it is. So I think we're about to see finance really permeate its way all over the internet. In the presentation I gave at the All In Summit a few weeks ago, I provided some more examples as well. I'll give one more here. I mean, every podcast, you host a podcast, and if you're talking about a ticker or an asset, clearly there should be a buy and a sell button for that asset overlaid on top of your podcast, right? Like, it's just obvious.
Right.
And it's actually crazy that the internet doesn't work this way, because it's one of those things that, like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So I expect all of this is going to kind of happen over the fairly near future. And this is really the vision of internet capital markets.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's a great explanation. It's the most in-depth explanation I've heard of it so far, and it's easy to envision, right? And I think we're already getting there. You mentioned the Telegram bots. You mentioned Kalshi prediction markets, which has kind of been hot in the retail space recently. Obviously, with some of these big investments into Polymarket, into Kalshi. Real quick, I know we got a couple minutes left. I want to touch base on this idea of like entertainment finance, right? The Solana meme coins that sort of led the revival of Solana, I think, back up to over $200. We had the Pump Fund, Bags app, these launch pads, right? And now we have streamer coins. And, I kind of go around the office and I talk to a lot of people on our trade desk who are familiar with derivatives. They're familiar with interest rates, whatever, Forex. And I'm like, and I kind of give them the analogy, and I'm like, well, let me, who Mr. Beast is, right? And some of them do. Most of the younger kids do. And I go, what if you could have bought a token on his stream when he launched 10 years ago and held that, right? And I think when you give that analogy, people sort of begin to understand that there's value here, right? Like you said, I host a podcast, live stream. We're a financial media network tied to a brokerage. Shouldn't I be able to value the attention that this gets? Shouldn't I be able to value the attention that I can create here? And I think that's what some of these launch pads are getting at. So I just want to get your commentary on that, the meme coins and, the trenches, some of that.
Yeah. So really glad you used the term entertainment finance. Quick history lesson. Most of your viewers, I'm sure, will be appalled to realize that the godfather of entertainment finance is Jim Cramer. Yeah. But like when you pause and think about it, it's like he was first. Right. Really, no questions asked. He was first. And that's boomer entertainment finance, obviously. Right. I think the kind of entertainment finance 2.0 started during COVID. And I think it was kind of led by first Dave Portnoy when he did Daily Day Trader Global. He had his green hammer. Yep. And then kind of Roaring Kitty. Right. I think they were kind of like the kicking off point of entertainment finance 2.0. Today, I think we're like squarely in the phase of entertainment finance 3.0. which is shows like yours, but there's plenty of shows where guys are pulling up charts and stuff and with their viewers and such. And then you're starting to see, I'm not sure that's what I would call 2.0. I think the 3.0 version is what basically is starting on Pump, which is you are doing a stream and then there's a token tied to it, right? And specifically in the context of trading, it seems very obvious that a streamer should go long or short something on stream, and then their audience should want to copy trade or counter trade them, clearly.
Right.
And then maybe you create some token tied to whatever the trading profits around that or something, right? So that seems very obvious. The Pump guys are obviously running a lot of experiments in here and trying to kind of figure all of that out. But it does feel to me like we're kind of on the precipice of entertainment finance 3.0. Maybe the Pump guys pull it off, maybe they don't. I don't think anyone has quite cracked it just yet. But certainly it feels like there's a lot of brain power and experimentation going on in the space. And I'm pretty optimistic that this is going to become a major new subset of the internet.
Yeah, I think it's one of my big theses too, is like creator coins, and there's indexes out there that are beginning to track it. If you look, and I know, Pump is the major platform, but I think Zora is kind of capitalizing on this a little bit. And you're beginning to see some of these creators pop up, some of these newer media models pop up. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Coinage Media at all, but you're able to own pieces of these content creators, these streamers. Like you said, copy trading. What's live is a big thing. So I'm excited to follow it. I think it's a narrative that's going to catch fire over the next couple, maybe it'll take a year, maybe it'll take a couple months. I don't know. But it's something to pay attention to. So I really appreciate your viewpoint on that. So we got a couple minutes left, and I just ask all my guests, what's your bold prediction for the next 10 years in crypto?
What's my bold prediction for the next 10 years in crypto? I think 6 million Bitcoin will be stolen by quantum computers.
Okay, interesting. That's a good one. That's a really good one. I'm gonna definitely a polarizing.
I think that will happen well before the 10-year mark.
Okay, all right, great. So, last thing, where can our audience find you and follow along after today's show?
Yeah, I'm super active on Twitter. My handle is just my name, Kyle Samani. And I always have a lot of fun there. You can learn more about Multicoin on our website, multicoin.capital. And then, of course, I think we have here Forward Industries on the website here too, on the stream. And it's just forwardindustries.com.
Great. Well, that's all we have today. Thanks for joining us. Kyle, thanks again. Really interesting conversation, and appreciate you being here. And we'd love to get you back on soon. Good luck with everything. Peace.
Dan, thanks so much.
Yep.